Hello. Thank you for tuning in to our recommended design open house for the Hennepin Avenue South corridor. In terms of introductions for our presentation, I'm Becca Hughes, Senior Transportation Planner and Project Manager for this reconstruction effort with the City of Minneapolis Transportation Planning and Programming Division. I'm joined by other project team members, including Alan Klugman with the City of Minneapolis Traffic and Parking Services Division, Adam Hea with the City of Minneapolis Transportation Engineering and Design Division, as well as Jonette Kunow and Jessica Labs from Kimley Horn, our consultant leads on the project. I would also like to acknowledge other project team members and their contributions to this project, including Amy Barnsdorf with the City of Minneapolis Transportation Planning and Programming Division, as well as Nick Turner and Mike Anderson with Align Engineering. While we'd like to be out in the community and having these conversations and sharing these designs in person, per our current city policy, all communications will continue to be virtual. Please keep in mind that we have a full suite of information available on our project website, located here, which is www.minneapolismn.gov, projects Hennepin South. And we also have a project email in which you can ask questions and provide feedback on the recommended design to the project team. In terms of the agenda, we will begin with an overview of the project. We will then provide a brief refresher of the policy guidance that is the foundation for the recommended design. We'll summarize key feedback themes heard to date, and then share the recommended layout and design details as well as technical analysis. We'll conclude with the project schedule. The Hennepin Avenue Reconstruction Project extends from Douglas Avenue on the north to Lake Street on the south. It is about a 1.3-mile segment that was last reconstructed in 1957, so it's nearly 65 years old. The corridor bisects two council wards, 7 on the west and 10 on the east. There are 3 neighborhood associations, including East Isles, Lowry Hill East, and Lowry Hill, 2 special service districts along the corridor, as well as 1 organized business association. Businesses, residents, and various other stakeholders have been engaged and involved to date. As we look to redesign the Hennepin Avenue corridor for the next 50 years, the 3 main inputs to the recommended design included policy plans, public feedback, as well as technical analysis. The foundation for the design options for the Hennepin Avenue corridor were rooted and developed based on the city's adopted policy guidance noted on this slide, which includes the Climate Action Plan, our 20-year streets funding plan, our complete streets policy, the overarching comprehensive plan for the city of Minneapolis, known as Minneapolis 2040, our 10-year transportation action plan, our Vision Zero action plan, as well as our street design guide. Our engagement efforts for the Hennepin Avenue corridor began back in 2018, and this was prior to us submitting an application for federal funding for the corridor. Our next round of engagement in September and October of 2020 was following a successful application for the federal dollars. Our last round of engagement was in March and April of 2021. And during this entire time, we've been engaging with numerous neighborhoods, businesses, as well as attending special service district meetings. We've also had open houses during each of these rounds of engagement, and we've received more than 5,000 comments on the project. And those comments are continuing to come in as we've released the recommended design for the corridor. One thing that we have been clear about throughout the entire engagement process is that this project would transform the corridor, which is why we've done substantial engagement on this project. We've also been very clear that status quo, or maintaining the existing cross-section for the street, is not an option for the next 50 years. There are several key feedback themes that we've heard throughout the engagement process over the course of the last couple of years. There are many competing comments that simply cannot be addressed on one layout. There is no perfect design solution for the corridor given the demands and the needs, and given the constraints of a finite amount of space within the public right-of-way. Themes that we have heard consistently include support for a bicycle facility on Hennepin Avenue consistent with our policy plans, concern that not enough on-street parking is being provided, support for bus lanes, and suggestions for transit priority to improve transit operations on this important corridor in the city, concerns with traffic congestion on Hennepin Avenue with the reduction in through lanes, as well as concerns as it relates to neighborhood streets and circulation. We've heard an interest in having a pedestrian-friendly street that includes greening, provides ample space for sidewalk cafes, as well as sustainable stormwater features that serve as amenities. We've also received requests to delay the project. Given the age of the existing street infrastructure, there were several issues with the existing roadway that needed to be addressed with the proposed layout. This is a chart that summarizes those efforts. In conclusion, the recommended design addresses and improves major issues in the corridor and best meets the key policy objectives. We will detail these efforts later in the presentation. And from here, I'll transition to Jonette. She will be sharing and detailing our recommended design for the corridor.
As Becca talked about, the recommended design is based on the combination of the city's policies and plans, as well as public input and technical analysis. A snapshot of the recommended design layout is shown on this slide. The layout for the entire 1.4-mile corridor can be found on the project website. The recommended design includes consistent sidewalk space along the corridor, a two-way sidewalk level bikeway on the east side of Hennepin Avenue, 2 full-time transit lanes, 2 vehicle lanes, and left turn lanes at key intersections. At Franklin Avenue and in the Lake Lagoon area, the traffic analysis showed higher vehicle counts and different traffic patterns. As a result, the recommended design includes additional lanes in these areas so that there would not be bottlenecks into and out of the corridor. Parking and loading spaces are recommended on the layout where there was space in the right-of-way and where they were most needed based on the overall parking resources in the area. Existing trees are also recommended to be preserved where feasible. In the next several slides, I'll describe in more detail the cross-sections and dimensions that occur along the corridor within the recommended design. This cross-section shows the typical section for the corridor with 8-foot sidewalks, 5-foot boulevards, a two-way bikeway on the east side of Hennepin Avenue, 2 full-time transit lanes, 2 vehicle lanes, and a 4-foot raised median. The street width of the recommended design is about 50 to 54 feet compared to the existing street width of 60 feet. On the east side of Hennepin Avenue, the boulevard is located between the bikeway and the sidewalk to provide separate spaces for people walking and people biking. The median is an important safety feature because left-turning vehicles in the middle of a block create conflicts with opposing vehicles as well as people walking and biking. On a busy street like Hennepin, drivers turning left into a driveway across 2 oncoming lanes are looking for a gap in vehicle traffic and often don't look for people walking and biking. Medians eliminate those conflicts and also reduce the frequent lane changing that occurs when vehicles are turning left out of a through traffic lane. This section is the same as the previous slide. Here we are highlighting the vehicle lane widths, which are 10 feet and are consistent with the city's street design guide. The transit lane dimensions include a 2-foot gutter on the outside of the street, and the vehicle lanes include a 1-foot gutter at the median. This graphic shows the street section at an intersection with a left turn lane. The left turn lanes are important for vehicle circulation and mobility, and this section occurs at 22nd Street, 24th Street, 26th Street, and 28th Street. With the space needed for the left turn lane, the median is removed. You will also see in this section that the boulevard spaces are shifted to provide 6 feet between the intersection curb and the bikeway. This shift occurs at all the intersections, even where there isn't a left turn lane. The 6-foot buffer creates space for vehicles to yield to people walking and biking and improves the sight lines for drivers turning across the bikeway and crosswalk. Where the bikeway is adjacent to the sidewalk, like in this section, a 1-foot buffer is maintained between the sidewalk and the bikeway. This section also illustrates the design at a constrained location where the bikeway is reduced from 10 feet to 8 feet. This section shows the typical dimensions where a parking and loading bay is included on Hennepin Avenue. The boulevard is narrowed to provide space for the parking loading bay, and a minimum of 3 foot of buffer is provided between the bikeway and the parking and loading bay. This 3 feet is needed due to car doors and space for signposts. In this section, the bikeway is also adjacent to the sidewalk with the 1-foot buffer. This slide shows the recommended section at a bus rapid transit or BRT station. There are 2 locations like this on the corridor at Franklin Avenue and at 25th Street. At these locations, 10 feet of space is needed for the BRT platform and the shelter. The recommended section at Uptown Transit Station, which is also proposed to be a BRT station, is similar to this, but the separate transit shelters are not needed there because of the existing transit center buildings. This snapshot from the recommended layout uses several of the sections that I just talked about. South of 28th Street is the primary section for the corridor with a median, green boulevards on both sides of the street, and the boulevard on the east side separating the bikeway and the sidewalk. At 28th Street is the section with the left turn lanes. In this layout, you can also see that right turn vehicles share the transit lane at the intersections. North of 28th Street, you can see a section with a parking and loading bay on the east side of the street. As we move along the corridor north to 25th Street, this part of the recommended layout includes one of the locations with a BRT station. As I mentioned, the recommended design layout for the full corridor is available on the project website, and you can see the recommended design at specific locations along the corridor. Now we will spend a bit more time talking about the recommended design features and their rationale.
Thanks, Jeanette. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, there were numerous issues we were looking to address with the recommended design for the corridor. In terms of existing conditions and context, Hennepin Avenue is on the city's high injury network, and pedestrians and bicycles are overrepresented in injury crashes. There are narrow sidewalks in some blocks, especially on the northern portion of the corridor. And Hennepin Avenue, with new policy guidance, is on the city's pedestrian priority network. In terms of the recommended design for the corridor, some of the features we are incorporating include reduced crossing distances on Hennepin Avenue, enhanced pedestrian crossings, including signals at 2 key locations, Fremont Avenue and 25th and a half Street. Curb extensions will be provided on cross streets where feasible, and we've integrated medians throughout the corridor to reduce conflicts at driveways and preclude left-hand turns. We've worked with 7 property owners to close and consolidate driveways. And in terms of a typical condition, we will have 8-foot sidewalks from Lake Street to Franklin Avenue, 5.5 feet to 7 feet where constrained, and 6-foot sidewalks north of Franklin Avenue. In terms of bicycle design, currently there is no dedicated bicycle facility on the Hennepin Avenue corridor. As previously mentioned, Hennepin Avenue is on the city's high injury network where pedestrians and bicycles are overrepresented in injury crashes. According to new policy guidance, Hennepin Avenue is on the city's all ages and abilities, or the AAA bicycle network. In terms of the recommended design, we are integrating a sidewalk level 2-way protected bikeway on the east side of Hennepin Avenue that is typically 10 feet in width. It is 8 feet in width at constrained locations, and the design accounts for the intersection with protected bikeways on east-west corridors. Other items to mention is that we did evaluate bikeways on other streets, but those did not meet our city goals and policies. We evaluated one-way bikeways on the Hennepin Avenue corridor as well, but they didn't fit given the space constraints. We did provide, with a recommended design, an extension north of Franklin to the Loring Greenway on the east side of the corridor. Regarding transit design, the existing dynamic bus-only lanes that were implemented in 2018 along portions of the corridor have reduced transit travel times 15 to 18% and improved transit reliability by 50 to 75%. We anticipate and expect that ridership will continue to grow 25 to 35% with the implementation of the E-Line Bus Rapid Transit project. There are a significant number of transit riders that have a destination on or proximate to the Hennepin Avenue corridor, and Hennepin Avenue, according to recent policy guidance, is also on the city's transit priority network. In terms of a recommended design, we will be integrating full-time 24/7 transit lanes from Douglas Avenue to the Uptown Transit Station. Bus rapid transit stations will be located at Franklin, 25th Street, and the Uptown Transit Station, and there will be a reduced number of local stops. It's important to note that through the end of 2020, bus rapid transit in the Twin Cities retained 76% of the pre-pandemic ridership. But by comparison, all Metro Transit services retained only 46% of pre-pandemic ridership. As noted, this segment of Hennepin Avenue is part of a larger planned future bus rapid transit E-line corridor. The E-line will total 13.3 miles, include 34 stops, and will connect the Southdale Transit Center in Edina to the LRT Metro Green Line Westgate Station in St. Paul. As noted, this reconstruction effort is approximately 1.3 miles in length, with a total of 6 stops at 3 locations. We continue to coordinate efforts with Metro Transit on this important transit investment. Alan will now address the vehicle design component of the layout.
Thanks, Becca. Before I discuss the framework of our proposed design, I will start by reviewing what we have in the corridor today. As Becca previously noted, there are a number of issues with the current roadway. Hennepin today is an undivided roadway with 4 general purpose lanes. That is an inherently inefficient and unsafe design characterized by vehicles weaving between lanes, cars being delayed behind other cars attempting left turns at either mid-block driveways or intersections, and friction with buses merging in and out of the travel lanes. Proof of the challenges with this roadway show up in many ways, including the statistical fact that this roadway is on our high injury network, and the operational fact that we cannot even accommodate left turns at signals during the peak times. Also, this roadway serves more than a strict local function, and that needs to be considered as we look to clarify the travel flow. We've studied the usage pattern on Hennepin in great detail, and Hennepin is a fairly unique roadway. Unlike other corridors in the city that look like Hennepin, but serve more for neighborhood circulation and nearby destinations, Hennepin handles a significant number of through trips. In fact, 50% of the traffic in the corridor represents through travel, most of that on Hennepin, with some on the nearby streets east and west of Hennepin. Combining these facts about Hennepin leads us to our proposed design. Jonette has already reviewed the design in some detail, so I will just summarize here. For through general vehicle travel, we have 1 lane in each direction for most of the corridor. At about half of the intersections, we provide a dedicated left turn pocket. This is a much safer treatment for left turns and provides for neighborhood access and circulation throughout the day. Where we do not have left turn lanes, we will ban left turns for at least much of the day when it would be unsafe to attempt a left turn from the single vehicle lane. Another key feature of this layout is the median, which will enhance safety for pedestrians and bicyclists by preventing problematic mid-block left turns across those modal users. The median will also serve to smooth out traffic flow by eliminating mid-block left turn disruptions. Finally, at the endpoints where volumes or turns are much higher, we do have 2 lanes in each direction to meet those needs. This map shows where we propose to provide the left turn lanes. As you can see, there are many opportunities for local access and circulation. So although this layout provides fewer lanes than today for general purpose traffic, with the clarity of the travel flow, the median to prevent mid-block left turn friction, and the separation of the buses into their own zone, this is a very efficient use of space for general purpose traffic, and will result in travel times that will be similar to today's. Our modeling of the busiest times of the day show future travel times for trip traversing the entire corridor being within 1 to 2 minutes of today's travel times. Next, Jonette will review the parking and loading characteristics of the area.
In the existing conditions, there are 311 on-street parking spaces on Hennepin Avenue between Douglas Avenue and Lake Street. The overall parking resources along the corridor include 3,600 existing parking spaces in parking lots, parking ramps, and on-street parking within 1 block of Hennepin Avenue. Through all the engagement for this project, we have heard and take seriously the need for parking and loading spaces for businesses. As we work through the design options for Hennepin Avenue, city policies and plans guided the allocation of space and prioritized space for other uses over space for parking and loading. The recommended design has 20 parking and loading spaces on Hennepin Avenue, which were placed based on where they fit within the street design and also where the spaces were most needed based on the availability of other parking resources like parking lots. We recognize that 20 spaces are not enough to meet the needs of businesses on Hennepin, and as a result, the recommended design also includes district parking solutions for the corridor. These strategies include parking loading spaces on Hennepin Avenue and on adjacent blocks, which are shown in yellow on the right side of this slide. Strategies that could be used in those areas include short-term zones for loading and for parking, which are most needed for deliveries and customers, and meters to encourage parking turnover. The City of Minneapolis will be developing a new curbside use policy in 2022, which will help inform the parking solutions implemented on Hennepin. The maps on this slide provide an illustration of how the recommended parking spaces on Hennepin Avenue and the recommended locations for district parking strategies were identified. The map on the left illustrates the total existing parking resources along Hennepin Avenue, including street parking, parking ramps, and parking lots. The darker colors represent blocks with the most total existing parking spaces, and the lightest colors show blocks with the least number of existing parking spaces. The map on the right shows the recommended on-street parking and loading spaces on Hennepin Avenue, with the number of spaces indicated in the blue circles. The blocks with yellow shading indicate proposed blocks for district parking strategies. Both the parking loading spaces on Hennepin and the district parking strategies are focused on blocks with the least number of total existing parking spaces, where the businesses rely most on the on-street parking resources. Finally, there are some design elements that we want to acknowledge either aren't on the recommended layout or need additional refinement and detailed design work. Those design elements include green space, stormwater management, raised crossings at intersections, traffic signal design and operations like turn phasing and bike signals, intersection design details like curb radii, and construction staging. These are elements that are very important to the design and will continue to be explored as the project enters the detailed design phase. We will have more information about these elements later in 2022.
The overall project schedule for the Hennepin Avenue Corridor Reconstruction project is noted on the screen. We are in the last round of engagement out of the 3 rounds of engagement shown since 2020. Layout approval through the City Council is anticipated in Q1 of 2022. We expect that utility coordination as well as development of the final engineering plans will occur through 2023.
As we wrap up the presentation, I want to touch on the information that is posted for you on the project website and the various ways that you can participate and provide input to the project. All the project materials and links to provide input are posted on the project website, minneapolis.mn.gov/projects/Hennepin South. There you can view the recommended cross-sections and the recommended corridor layout. You can look at specific areas in more detail than what we were able to cover in this presentation. There is also a summary of the recommended design and frequently asked questions about the project. A video of this presentation is posted on the website so that everyone has a chance to view it even if you are not able to attend the live meeting. There is also a link to a comment form where you can provide us with open-ended comments. Finally, there is an email link to contact the project team directly with any questions.